Andrew Breitbart said that politics is downstream of culture. And with our modern culture, a lot of times that makes me worried. But right now it's kind of beginning of June and I'm seeing a lot less rainbow flags than I used to. And it makes me wonder, is our culture healing? We're going to be talking about family culture and more. It's time to spill some sweet tea. Welcome back, everyone, to the Sweet Tea series. Happy summer. We're back here in the studio today, and with me is a friend of mine, Dr. Marianna Orlandi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
With us talking about family, culture, stuff in the middle of June, I could think of no one better to be here. So just to go through a little bit of your bio, she's the executive director and also the director of academic programs at a group called the Austin Institute for Family and Culture. And I got to see some of that back whenever I was at UT Austin. Before that, she was a research scholar and lecturer at Princeton University. And before that, she was actually practicing criminal law in Italy. So welcome again to the show. And how do you go from a lawyer in Italy to talking about family in Texas?
You know, I think I'm still trying to figure out the answer myself. So it would be very interesting if I could give you a very short version of it. There is a thread that keeps everything together. The study of law for a lot of Europeans and a lot of South Americans is what a lot of people go into here when they go to philosophy. There's a desire to look for justice, to understand. In my case with criminal law, you know, what is a crime? Is there such thing as guilt? What is ill intention? These questions lead you very quickly, or at least led me, to wonder, is abortion a crime? Is assisted suicide okay? Is a woman that grew up in the culture of today guilty if she commits an abortion? Or she doesn't even know what she's doing because she's been brainwashed. So I think that there is a thread that keeps my studies and my interests together. I always wanted to understand why things are the way they are. And I don't know, I think that the purpose of all I do is to make society better, starting with the family for sure, because like that's the first society we all know. So I think I answered your questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's that thread of philosophy and trying to discover what the truth is
Truth-seeking. Can I add something here? Truth-seeking is the motto of one of the professors that I've been most influential in my life, Professor Robert P. George. Honest truth seekers and courageous truth speakers is what institutes like the Austin Institute try to create in the students and young professionals that come to us. Truth-seeking means we don't own the truth. We're still looking for it. And I think that, you know, this is not only the motto that I live by today. This was also, and I recently remembered it, it was during a philosophy of law course that I kind of became more serious about my faith. And the way it all happened was by the presentation of a dialogue by St. Augustine called Contra Academicos, where the skeptical and the dogmatic are talking to each other. And this dialogue is the way for St. Augustine to say that we can never possess the truth, but the truth exists, and that a good life is a life looking for it. So, yeah, again, you know, this philosophy of law course was in my University of Padua back in Italy, and the truth seeking I'm doing it in Texas, passing through Princeton. But maybe because Texas is, the way I say it, is the last free place in the Western world. I don't know if I'm being too extreme with that, but I know that I have not experienced freedom as I do in Texas elsewhere. Yeah.
Wow. And then especially like because you're coming from Europe, which is, I think, like the beginning of the West, or where that a lot of our Western ideology comes from. So do you see, I guess, threats to Texas and our, I guess, do you see a path where Texas continues to follow the trends that Europe's gone down in that degradation?
I think there is something profoundly different in the American culture that will not be okay with it. I can speak for Italians, but it's true for most Europeans. We consider ourselves as citizens, and our citizenship is granted by the state. So we owe to the state the fact that we have rights. For an American, this isn't thinkable, right? If the state is there, it's because I want him there. If I don't, the state can go away. right? But we will never have that mindset over there. I really doubt that could ever happen. And I don't know what it would take for Americans to start thinking in those terms. Now, if we don't have civic education, sure, young people could start believing that they owe everything that they haven't possessed to some, imaginary abstract entity called the state. But I don't see that happening, at least not in the near future. It took me a while to understand the importance of free speech the way Americans understand it, because there is something shocking when you come from Europe to think, is it okay to say outrageous things and to defend indefensible philosophies, something that, here is possible. But I have come to believe that this is way better than the alternative, right? And that control of thought and speech is much, much more terrifying. I was just reading again some news of someone being incarcerated for saying something about gender in Brussels. So, yeah, I don't see that happening here. But if you guys have something to do to prevent that from happening, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. So where does the Austin Institute fit into all of this, into that truth seeking and, I guess, preservation of things like the family and parts of Western civilization?
So the Austin Institute does it in two ways. One way is by promoting, supporting, divulging research on the family, on sexuality, on relationships, particularly the research of our president, Professor Mark Ignaris, is currently updating, for instance, his book on cheap sex, right? And cheap sex was great in describing, before a lot of amazing authors that we read today, like I can think of Abigail Favale, Mary Harrington, or Louise Perry, they basically, these are women that are telling women the way you're using your bodies is not conducive to relationships and to marriage. And they're saying it from almost a liberal perspective, if you want, definitely. These are things that in the book Cheap Sex, published, 10 years ago, were already there, right? Called it the marriage market. But that concept was already there. So Professor Ignaris is updating his research, and I think we're promoting other research, some things on the effects of divorce, the role of grandparents in raising kids. The other side of the truth-seeking process, the one that I'm most dedicated to, at least for now, I might get too old for that, so I don't know, but it's helping young people who already have a desire for truth and that are not satisfied with the answers they're being given in college, to look for truth with us. So we organize. We had an undergraduate fellowship. We're now going to transform it into a colloquia series that's going to be open to everyone, where we just read things together. We have reading groups. We have seminars, lectures, men's group. We've had a women's group. Through these programs, we try to create community among the students and to have them think about, say, divorce. Right. We don't provide answers. At least I try not to. Of course, people know where I stand personally, but I try not to make it nobody needs to agree with me before having a conversation. And
so it's very Socratic, I guess, in the way you discuss things.
It is, or at least, again, we try to be. And I say we try also because a lot of young students, as you probably have witnessed, or you wear yourself, in college, younger people prefer, they have very bold opinions for, in every direction. So I think it's very important to try to calm everyone down. And for instance, last year we decided to have what we called a secular creed, but it's basically, I don't know if it's a code of conduct, but like in this statement that we make all our attendees sign if they want to be part of our community, there is that truth seeking requires charity towards the other and requires curiosity towards what they have to say. So you might disagree with them, but it's always worth to understand why do they think that things they think? Where do they come from? What can they teach you? So it requires also some humility, right? And saying maybe you don't have it all. You don't have it at 20-year-old just because you took one philosophy course and you went to 2 political conventions. Yeah. It's not that you have all the answers and you know what the state should look like and whether we need an army or not and who's our biggest enemy. So I mean, I hear this, very bold comments very often. Yeah, so I think that's the way we do it. We do it with a little podcast, which is nowhere as cool as yours, but we do it, yeah, in every way, in every possible way.
Yeah, well, I feel like you need to give more credit to the podcast than that. You have wonderful guests that come through who are usually like subject matter experts, or you had like a C.S. Lewis expert on that I was a podcast or an episode that I really liked. So definitely go check that out. But I also, like, while I have you here, I wanted to get some of your reactions to the way that I think we are seeing some more positive cultural shifts. So I think even, especially in 2023, 2024, leading up to the election, there was a lot of, I guess, fear and the conservative movement just feeling like, actually, we don't know which way the country is going. It seems like it all might be collapsing. And now with the rise of the new right, we're kind of seeing a mixed bag of, well, it's not quite conservative, but it seems better than what some of the far left was doing. And one of the things that's changing is it seems like in June, I feel like, especially in Austin, it was just the rainbow flags plus all the extra like lines that they added on in the past few years, just everywhere. And near UT campus, I'm sure you probably see even more of it than I do. But I was watching this, just a reel on Instagram, and it was someone showing all of the companies that last year changed their Twitter logos to have rainbows on it. And then they didn't change them this year. So that was companies like IBM, HP, Vogue, Paramount, like American Airlines. Last year, they all did the rainbow thing. This year, they just left them. And then the one that even surprised me more was Starbucks even didn't change their logo this year. And on top of that, there was an article from Axios that was just showing how like 39% of companies decided to back down or like decided to scale back their Pride Month, like external stuff that they were doing. And then Pride, like the Pride parades this year, just in general in different cities, their budgets had to like decrease because they don't have as many corporate sponsorships. So do you think that that's indicative of like an overarching cultural change that we're seeing right now? Or what are you seeing?
Okay, I'm going to be negative first.
Oh, please, go ahead.
The companies are mercenaries. They will do what pays. Mm-hmm. If right now the political moment is not conducive to rainbow flags, they're not going to do it. If it's conducive next year, they're going to do it
again.
I don't believe, that there are changes in approach. Other negative comments I could make. Once it became okay for women to sleep around, people didn't even have to, justify themselves anymore. So, could we say that you don't need to have flags and because at this point everyone agrees that this is just the state of the art? On the positive, I would tell you, why would you can we even define at this point what LGBT is if we do not even agree that we are embodied? We are trying to work so much on our bodies that I'm not necessarily a woman, depends, right? But also I could live forever, or I could die tomorrow and demand a right to be killed. I don't know that our culture has the intellectual vocabulary to even defend ways in which we use our bodies, because we don't really understand who we are. Mm-hmm.
Like what you're saying is, if you don't know what a person is, and if that entails just the mind or just the body, or if it's if you don't have that philosophy, then how can you even speak about it?
Yeah. So I don't know that younger people even need they even feel the need to define themselves as one thing or another as of today. I think that fluidity has really become common. I mean, not in certain circles, but in the broader culture, I think it's common. Now, the good thing maybe of not having Pride months, not having any other months, is that it's subtle and not so subtle propaganda, right? So you're constantly bombarded by. At the same time, I would say what messages are more dangerous, like the ones that are in your face or more subtle ones?
Because you don't think about the subtle. At least if it's in front of you, you have to, you at least have to engage with it in some way. Yeah,
so, and to give you an example that I always give, my generation was ruined by watching Friends, which I absolutely adore. It's probably one of the best shows. I almost, if I can close every night watching an episode, I do. But it's absolutely terrible pedagogically.
I love that you said that, because my generation, Gen Z, makes fun of millennials for liking Friends.
Why? So how? See how?
Yeah, that's so the Gen Z the official Gen Z opinion online that we've all decided to agree to is that Friends isn't actually that funny.
That's so good. I mean, you don't get it. You just don't get it.
But then I have heard, like, in the Catholic sphere, like, have you heard Matt Fradd's description of Friends? What he says?
What did he say?
He'll say, and so, like, actually, context for everyone, Matt Fradd's this, like, Catholic YouTuber who, I guess, yeah, he's in the Catholic sphere, Australian guy, but he says, Friends is a show about 3 stupid men and 3 whole women. And I'm like, whenever you think about it, that might be what the show's all about.
Yeah. But this thing, right, that it's okay to have multiple relationships within the same group of friends, that they are in their 30s and don't even know what they're gonna go do. It starts with the Ross having a baby with his ex-wife that is now a lesbian. It ends with Phoebe serving as a surrogate mother for her own brother. I was 14 or 15. Now, these things are they are subtle because you don't even realize what's happening, right? But then when you're like 10 years later, someone tells you, oh, I decided, to help my friends and be a surrogate for them. And there's somewhere in this memory that your hero, Phoebe, did it in Friends. Like, you don't, for someone like, I don't know, I have been studying my whole life these things. Of course I think about it. But if your job is if you work at a bank, why? I mean, I cannot expect you to start thinking about the ethical complications of these kind of choices. Mm-hmm. Asking people to think about the ethical complication even of, I mean, I don't want to offend anyone. I was like, there are ethical complications to a lot of things we take for granted. Let me just say that. Yeah.
It is weird also, even within, I guess, the new right that I was talking about. I think conservatives and people within the space are trying to figure out what, if they actually have any real beliefs or what it is that differentiates them from other people and what it means to be part of this coalition. Because there is division right now on things, even, I think less so on abortion, but on things even like IVF or like the surrogacy. And I think that's where, or even stuff like sleeping around. So I think part of the modern right-wing movement, it's not only only Christians or people who share that kind of mentality. So it does make it an interesting space to walk through. It is
interesting, but if you study abortion and if you understand that the problem is discarding life after conception, you easily understand that this happens inevitably with in vitro. Mm-hmm. So you need to decide where you stand there, which is, everyone can choose for themselves, but like there needs to be consistency.
Right.
The other thing that I wanted to say, what did you mention right after that? Because I think I really wanted to go on the next thing you did say. Talk about abortion, IVF, and then what was the other one?
Oh, or even how women now are
the sleeping around part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what makes me, like, I was discussing this yesterday with someone. So the negative effects of the pill for women have been proven, right? So there are also some pros, but there are a lot of bad concepts. There are a lot of negatives. And then you hear some women telling you, oh, but it's a progress, it's women's freedom. It's like, yeah, but then you hear women telling you, yeah, but if I don't do that, he would not date me. Like, he would not, if I'm not on birth control. So, and that's where I'm thinking, like, so is this freedom? Is this progress for women? That unless you are at someone's disposal without consequences, you would not be in a relationship? I mean, this kind of thinking is just shocking to me. Because it's the kind of thinking that a woman who feels like she's an object and has no rights should think that way. But an empowered woman, she's like, hey, this is the way I come, right? I have organs that are reproductive. So you want me? You take the whole thing, right? You can't have someone in bits and pieces. So I think that's not even an ethical. It's an anthropological question, which I think is also what at the Institute we focus about. It's like, you started with that. What is the human person? Mm-hmm. What is a human being, and then what is a man and what is a woman, right? Difficult questions for sure. I don't have the answers, but I love looking for them, like right. Searching this answers with others.
One of the other things that, and I'm glad we brought up the abortion subject, only because I think it was yesterday, I think it was on June 4th when the guy who invented the abortion pill, he died, and I think he was in his late 90s at this point. But Michael Knowles was talking about it on his show, and he was just remarking at the hundreds of, or tens, at the conservative estimates are hundreds, or sorry, tens of millions of babies lost due to the abortion pill since its
By the abortion pill, you mean the mifepristone?
Yeah, or I thought I had written it down.
The RU486, whatever it's called.
Yeah, but it's a mifepristone, that one.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
But the one that's like done in the earlier stages.
Yeah, in the earlier days. And I think it was the EPPC that came out with a study like a week ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's interesting just all these
effects.
things happening right after one another. And then actually I've talked to a few ladies about this, but I've noticed just secularly some of the women that I'm friends with and just online, there's a lot of women who are not not for religious reasons or because they're conservative. There's just a lot of women who are choosing to stop being on like different kinds of birth control because they realize that it's changing their who they are, and they'll go off and be like, oh, I'm a totally different person, or I didn't realize that this was affecting me negatively in all these ways.
Yeah, there's an amazing book by it was a professor, I can't remember where she's teaching now, maybe at SMU. This is Your Brain on Birth Control. She was at UT for a while. From a liberal perspective and saying, if you want to take it, take it. But like the study is shocking, and even explaining why a lot of women, once they stop taking birth control, they don't like their partner anymore.
Yes. One of my friends had that exact scenario. She was dating a guy for about a year, and she was like, okay, maybe it's going to get like serious discerning marriage. And she's like, but I can't tell if I liked, at the time she was like, well, maybe I don't actually like him and it's just because of this. So when she went off, she realized she was not into him and ended that relationship.
Yeah, it's shocking. There's that, something like related to her smell. But then one thing that shocked me even more, which tells me how much we should be a little more humble in admitting that there are a lot of things we don't understand, was this phenomenon by which women who are not on birth control naturally select men as mates whose immune system combined with theirs makes for healthy offspring. If you add the pill in the mix, there is much more like a mistake in the mating, right? So you don't make the best choice you could have made, which I find it, very interesting. It's like our bodies have intuition for a lot of things, which is also why I'm not a big fan of online dating, because I think you lack all the clues that would come from the way someone smiles, someone walks, who are the friends around, in what kind of place do you meet the person. Just too many things that get, left out, but...
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that component, because we were talking, it's all coming back to what makes up the human person. And if there is the physical component of it, and even the things like you're saying we don't understand, hormonally, that might attract you to someone else.
Yeah. But then the tone of the voice, sometimes to my guy friends, I tell, you maybe see a very beautiful girl sitting at the bar and then you hear her laugh, and just the tone of the voice, you're just like, can't do that,
Yeah.
But, and for us, it's the same. I think, I don't know about you, but for me, the voice is absolutely fundamental. Yeah.
That's just, But it's also interesting because that's something that you would pick up on, but maybe for someone else, it's a different aspect that they're, for whatever reason, more attracted to. The other thing that I guess is coming up for me in this idea of seeking for truth and trying to seek truth about the human person, and we're going to continue to, I think, as we learn more scientifically and other stuff, be able to have more revealed to us. But there's, at the same time that this is happening, there's kind of the rise on the internet of the manosphere asking a lot of similar questions to what we're asking, or addressing even some of the same problems that we have about society, or things that we feel like are lacking or need to be changed or more preserved. But they end up with a very different solution and mindset than what I'm guessing that you would come to. Have you seen any of that or interacted with that at all?
I did, and it scares me. And I have a lot of charity towards the men that fall for the most extreme versions of the manosphere, because yes, they are reacting. They are reacting to some true things. As women who went too far with feminism to the point of rejecting men and calling them useless beings, and they were reacting to misogyny. these men are now reacting to a very feminized world that does not accept a man's way of doing things, that requires for apologies the way, the moment. And I could add a lot of things that make me also sound like a manosphere. Like, I think there's a lot of truth in the criticism. The problem is that, again, it's a reaction, and in this reaction there is hatred. But it's biblical. The enmity between man and woman didn't start last year. It didn't start with Andrew Tate. It didn't start 50 years ago. It's from the fall. The women hate men for some reason, and men hate women for other reasons. So I think that a good way to understand who's speaking the truth is just who is kind. It's like love is kind, right? For Christians, love is patient, love is kind. So if there is patience in understanding each other, if there is kindness and the way we talk to each other, I think we can be, we're pretty solid. Like, we're moving on solid ground. Now, the kindness of a man is not the kindness of a woman, for sure, but there's no violence. There is no... What I am afraid of is a rise in what I would call misogyny and some men that are, unsatisfied with the status of things, and would demand from women behaviors that they think women had in the past. I don't know, the idea that a woman should just stay at home, not. I heard someone say, that women don't belong in philosophy. I mean, I hope that everyone is shocked to hear it.
Yeah,
it's like, no, women have produced more thoughts and books and like that. Unfortunately, a lot of what was done is not even recorded. And one of my research fellows when I was at Princeton was Bronwyn McShay, historian. She wrote a book on the women in the church, but she's writing more now. I know she's working on writing more about all the influential women of just from the French Revolution, say, to the beginning of the past century. There's a lot more, right? So women are things that have always been, but back to the Austin Institute for the Study of Family, the two were together. Like, the thing that strikes me is that why can't we think of what we do as a joint effort, right? When people say, oh, behind a great man, there's always a great woman. Yeah, absolutely. And it can be, a professor friend was even saying, that talking about Tolstoy, I think, that clearly the book written had the wife reading and making comments, because there are some details about how a woman think or would answer that only a woman would have added to what a man can write. Couldn't and shouldn't we argue that men and women belong in all the various fields of the word, but as a couple, and that they're complementary in everything they do? That is my take. Sorry, I went again on a tangent.
Well, one thing that I think that is accurate that you're pointing out is that working togetherness. So I think a lot of the manosphere, what they're missing out on is, I mean, I have a limited scope of history, but theirs is, I think, even more limited, because they're thinking about this world where they keep, as they say, oh, woman should stay home, kind of away, man's out in the world. But that ignores just of generations before that, where you had the economy of the home, and you would either be have a farm, or even if you had your business operating out of your house where you're working on it as a family together. So I think that it's missing an understanding of how true economies worked throughout most of human history, and it was only this very brief moment of time where you had such a thing as this idea of what the housewife is, or other stuff like that.
And they still do. So one of the authors that I would recommend on this front, and in particular this topic, is Mary Harrington in Feminism Against Progress. She makes great points about this.
Sorry, what's the name of the book?
Mary Harrington, Feminism Against Progress.
Okay.
She makes, amazing points about all this, and how this imaginary past that was only in the 50s and only in America. So it's not a big point of reference. The other thing that comes to mind is one of my favorite, a role model, I would say, was an Italian journalist, became famous in the U.S. After September 11, Oriana Fallaci. She very early on wrote a book about feminism. She would call herself a feminist early on, then probably not anymore. But she traveled the world to describe the situation of women, and at some point she said that the most emancipated women in the world were the Japanese, and that is something I remember because my brother married a Japanese woman. But everyone would think the opposite, because they are very traditional. And up until recently, they wouldn't even work outside. But in reality, theirs is the real control. And that's very true still. You know, most bank accounts are in the name of the woman, and it's the woman that decides. So in a way, you could see the man as like this guy that goes out and works and just like, you know, provides, but doesn't do much more. Now, this is not the case because, again, every family that is not toxic, there is love and there is cooperation. All the other scenarios I can think of, they're just not good families. I mean, it's not about where you live or in which year. And I think that's always been true. I don't see Joseph treating Mary, you know, poorly because it was 2,000 years ago, you know? I think there was a lot of respect in that couple.
And I think that the love aspect is important because, like you were saying, this is it's a product of the fall that men and women aren't going to see eye to eye. And the way to fix that is by loving the other person through the fact that you have a misunderstanding. That's going to be there.
Yeah.
There's this also reminds me of a story that I feel like I need to rant about for a second.
Please.
You know how you were saying you've just met like or heard someone who said that women don't belong in philosophy? This is a tiny thing that happened a few weeks ago. I was like with a group that was my husband and we go to a Maronite Catholic church, and there was a group from the Roman Rite who were coming to visit, and afterwards a whole group was trying to figure out where to eat. So my husband, talking to two other people, he was like, oh, let me see what Ariana wants real quick, let's see what if she's craving anything. And the guy, again, this is an unmarried guy, who he goes, well, why does you don't think that you can just make that choice for yourself? And he was being actually serious, and he was like, you know, you're able to like just choose that kind of thing, right? Like you don't need to ask your wife for permission for stuff. And it was just a really weird, tiny thing.
Yeah, and I like that you laugh about it. I think what's very important is to meet these people early on and just make a comment that diminishes the comment they just made. So I hope your husband gave a perfect answer to demolish the guy,
100%.
right? So that they don't, because if you start having, and it can be attractive at 18, at 19 to feel cool, and then you start working with your own personal Bible.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that.
This guy's in his like 30s making that kind of comment still.
Yeah.
And part of me is like, well, see, my husband found a wife and got married, and maybe there's a reason. I don't know.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. And it was, but it was just such an interesting, it was a weird comment that I think ignores the fact that for Tony, like he wants, I thought that was like a super nice thing if he wanted to ask me what I was thinking, because that's just how our relationship's always been.
But again, I don't think that the person that asked the question really thinks what he said. Like this is the ideology that we need to fight on our own sides, because a comment like that to me is not something that came from his heart. It's just something that he has heard and being taught and brainwashed that, these men are now so weak and they always like follow what women say and they're not being manly anymore. Therefore, you should just decide and don't listen to her. I mean, we've read these things. They're everywhere on the internet and they're ridiculous. I mean, do you really think that that's the way? Yeah, I don't know. It's so stupid. It's offensive. It's probably we should not even waste time, but we need to waste time on this, because if some young men think that they're cooler by saying things like that, they will not get married.
Yeah, and I think he was being, like, it seemed like he was serious. So Tony was like, well, because I want her to have something she likes, so.
What scares me even most, Ariana, is that there might be some young girl prone to, because that are equally unsatisfied with the culture, that follow the lead of this 30-year-old man. Say they're in their early 20s, they have encountered they've lived a wild life, then they decide that life doesn't make them happy, and then a man like this becomes their role model. I may say I've met women like that, and then they fell for men who were not loving them, who were just reactionaries. So I think that's also a danger, which is why talking about these things is absolutely necessary.
So will you get to at your job, a lot of your work is both with like graduate students, but also some undergraduate women. What is like a piece of advice that you would offer for undergraduate women who living in today's culture?
Oh, realize that they're women. Be embodied. Realize that they have cycles in their months. Being happy that they're different. I think women more than men live a disembodied life until they're 35.
What do you mean by a
empty.
disembodied life?
A life that is, grades and work opportunities and how much is my weight, but not wondering whether they want to become mothers, whether their bodies are capable, whether they are nourishing people. Like if you've have you learned anything about taking care of others, or like could be by teaching or being a babysitter sometime, but like there are skills that a mother needs to have, that there is some instinct, but it's not all instinct. It's like when you learn how to cook, you can't just go by instinct all the time. I mean, you can be lucky, but so I would encourage young girls to realize that they are not sexless. And also the culture has made us sexless even in the shapes of our bodies. I mean, and the clothes. And I think this is much more a problem for women than for men. Women need to be a lot more in touch with their femininity in every possible form and shape. And I am guilty as charged, because I feel like, lawyer and PhDs and traveling around the world and living a man's life, living a achievement's life, titles life. It's not so feminine after all.
Something that I think both people are, how we were talking about how like the men in the situation where they end up in the manosphere, and then women who might follow along for it. I think something that would help people, I guess, move towards marriage is or family, and I think this benefits even within friendships, is what kind of person is it that you like, what kind of virtuous man is it that you want to end up with? Like for women, what is it that he would be looking for in a virtuous wife? And do I have those qualities already? And then also vice versa for men, if you are expecting a woman to have those kinds of qualities, or I think a lot of the manosphere almost sees women almost like it's a kind of servant or whatever, but it's weird the kind of guys who start speaking like that and aren't, they're not virtuous. So I think I'm
afraid I can give names to those people, but can I say like the greatest piece of advice I received in my early 30s, I was in Milan, and it was a conference. It was a famous psychotherapist. She's written a lot of books on men, women, marriage. They're translated in Spanish, not yet in English, sadly. But at some point, she's describing, crises within couples and marriages and how she deals with it. And she presented this, a common episode of a woman, and it could be a man, because then I talked to her more about it. But that comes to her and says, like, he needs to love me for who I am. And he doesn't. And her answer was like, no, he's going to tolerate you for who you are. If you want to be loved, you need to make yourself lovable. And I think that's where, what you're saying is like, what are the virtues? I'm just like, be not nice. Like, people need you to be nice in order to be around you. So even, this man that you described, like, ask or not ask for her opinion, but be nice, because a woman will not want to be with you if you're not nice to be around. So this working on ourselves, making ourselves lovable, trying to, improve where we know we are annoying. You wake up always with a horrible mood in the morning. Well, try to get out of it. If what helps you is a cold shower, take a cold shower. But like, you can't expect people to just fit in your habits, which is, I think, is more and more danger as we delay the time of serious relationship of marriage, because you learn up until you're 30 that you can be whatever mood you want, and you can eat at whatever time you like.
Yeah.
And yes,
and that
no.
causes some tension when two people who've lived their whole adult life in one way try to come together. Yeah. I think it seems like all of these things are coming back to, though, is humility. Like even being able to, like you were saying at the Austin Institute, like have good discussions back and forth, even if it's someone you disagree with. You have that humility to say, I can at least learn what makes them think the way that they do and how they got there. That teaches me something I didn't have before.
Yeah.
So
it always is the case.
And what about for young men? So you, of course, like also there's a lot of young men involved in it. What advice would you give them?
I have men friends. I have men friends, good men friends, and a lot of them. And I think the tragedy of the lonely world of like people that are online is also that men don't hang with each other a lot and have serious conversation with your guy friends. Serious conversation about, hey, I'm married and I have a friend who's a girl that is reaching out to me on Instagram. How do you deal with the same situation? Like things that might be, not easy to deal with. You don't really know, maybe before asking your wife and just creating, but like having men that are good counselors to each other. And I have friends that aren't that way. So that probably, and then maybe, you know, the reverse of what it was, appreciate women's difference. You know, appreciate how insanely different they are from you. No, they don't live life the way you do. They don't think the way you do. Their bodies don't function the same way. They are tired once a month and very active once a month. And like, no, she's not inconsistent. She's not crazy. You know, they're different. So maybe learn to appreciate this difference instead of wanting to have a peer. And for the peer, go to the man. If you want to have 5 beers, go to your guy friends, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today to talk through this. And there's other conversations like this you have with everyone else. Where can they find that again?
Well, they can come to the Austin Institute. There's going to be a lot of events starting when the school resumes in August. Even for professionals, we go just with the academic year. But there'll be, so if they go on our website, austin-institute.org, they can find everything. As of today, they will not find anything because the events are not up yet, but they will be soon. And if they subscribe to the newsletter, they will just, you know, be in the loop and know. But there's going to be something for everyone. We're also inaugurating a new program this year, and I think I can say that it's probably our first speaker for this Austin Institute Colloquia. It's going to be your very own Joshua Trevino.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So everyone go to that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be limited, the space. So they will need to sign up soon, which is, you know, further incentive.
Get on the newsletter then.
Just so that you're like the first to click. Because, you know, participation is always free. We're a nonprofit. But yeah, we always want to create a community, and very often intergenerational one. Because even that, you know, having fathers and grandfathers age that can talk to the students and have an exchange and understand how, you know, what people live in college is by no means the way things are, you know. We find that very helpful, and we think there's no other place where that can happen.
And then what about for if they want to be able to listen to some of these conversations? Tell us about your podcast.
Okay, what we can't not talk about, which is very complicated, but is on our website. The Double Negative comes from one of our favorite books written by one of our fellows, Professor Wojciechowski, What We Can't Not Know. It's about natural law. So What We Can't Not Talk About is a show where we decided that we can talk about everything.
All the things you can't not talk about.
Exactly, right? Sex, religion, and politics. That's the way I described it once. It's like, I mean, if we talk about culture,
subjects, right?
Yeah, it's what you have to talk about if you want to make progress. So they can find it on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on our YouTube channel. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. For everyone else, we'll see you next time.